Have you ever been all snuggled up in bed and suddenly think to yourself, oh shit, I forgot to water my plants? Introducing the Rainmaker 9000. Yes, you heard me correctly. This is the Rainmaker 9000. Are you tired of getting out of bed and having to water your plants? Or just forgetting about it while you're lazing around on the beach and then you come back and they're all dead? Dang it. Hate it when that happens. Well, this is the solution. This is the Rainmaker 9000. That's right. And I'm going to show you in this video what the hell it is, how it works, and how I built it, why I built it that way, and what I could do better next time. So stick around and check it out. Alright guys, welcome back to Pinkerton's Tech Lab. My name's Alex Pinkerton, and this is the lab. So on this episode, basically what I decided to do was something I've been thinking about for a while. I have a lot of plants. It's annoying to water them. I was thinking, man, it sure would be nice if I had a machine to water my plants for me. Something that was configurable and easy to use. So that's what I did, and I think it turned out pretty well. So yeah, let's talk about the vision now, and I'll break it down. So I wanted it to be fairly low cost and pretty simple. So what I ended up deciding to go with was a gravity fed system. So there won't be any pumps. There'll be a reservoir that the water is in, and it kind of comes down into the unit. And then the unit itself will have a touchscreen. I didn't want to fool around with knobs or buttons or any of that stuff. It's just annoying. And also I just wanted to build something on it with a touchscreen, which I'd never done. So we'll use a touchscreen for control, and then when you can set it and forget it. So the idea is you can kind of set how much water it should dispense into which tube at how often, what interval, and then it'll do that, and then you could just walk away and forget about it. So yeah, let's jump into the schematic and I'll show you how it's wired together. Alright guys, so let's take a look at this schematic here. So first things first, you'll see solenoid 1 and solenoid 2. Those are the things that are actually going to be controlling the flow of water. They are valves that are electronically controlled, so when the power is on, the valves will be open, and when the power is off, the valves will be closed. That's what you call a normally closed solenoid valve. And the thing that's actually controlling those two things are these relays. So the relays, you can think of those as basically an electronic switch that can be controlled by something else. And they basically control the flow of power to the solenoids, which then open or close those. So the relays are actually being controlled by the ESP32 cheap yellow display. Now that's the touchscreen microcontroller, and that's the thing that allows the user of this device to configure it and touch it and change things. And it sends electrical signals via these two purple control lines to turn the relays on or off. And that's pretty much it for the core of the circuit. Most of the other things are power delivery. So as far as power delivery goes, the whole circuit is powered by 12 volt DC power supply. And I have these two rails that just basically make it so we don't have to run as many wires all over the place. And they deliver 12 volts to the solenoids and the relays. And the only thing that doesn't run off of 12 volts is the touchscreen microcontroller itself. So for that, which is powered by 5 volts, we need to use what's called a buck converter to convert the 12 volts to 5. So that's what a buck converter is. And so yeah, with the buck converter in place and all the power rails, everything gets the power it needs, and we're not frying anything. And yeah, so that's pretty much it for the circuit overview. So now let's get to building it. Okay, so the next step was to move into 3D design. So the first thing I did was actually measure all the parts that I had and model them so that I could kind of place them around in 3D space and see if they would fit. And then I needed to design a front panel which would attach to the screen, a front compartment which would allow me to put all of the wires attached to the screen and hide them away, and then the main housing which would hold the solenoid valves and the relays, and then finally like a little lid thing just to kind of keep it tidy and hide all the stuff. And so yeah, that's kind of the design I ended up with. It's pretty simplistic, but I'm fairly new to Onshape, which is the 3D software I'm using, but I really like it and I think it's really fun, and it's been really cool to learn. So I'm pretty happy with the way this turned out considering my skill set here. And so yeah, the next step was to just kind of assemble it in real life. All right, guys, I want to show you this reservoir here. So what I ended up doing was sawing off a 1 liter soda bottle, and then I 3D printed this adapter here that's soda bottle to garden hose because I had a garden hose valve. And then I have an adapter which is garden hose to 1/4 outer diameter. And I decided to use this size tubing because I felt that any bigger tube would let just too much water come through, and it would be like kind of annoying to tune because it'd be like 1 second would drown your plants if it's a small plant. So that's why I ended up with this, and there's a lot to be improved here, but for version 1, it's good enough for me. Alright guys, here was the first test. You can see I basically just plug in the reservoir into that little hole that I left into the valves. Then I can close it off and tape it up and plug in the tubes to the bottom. And then at this point I had a splitter, so one valve was actually powering 2 tubes, and that didn't actually work too well ultimately, but that's kind of how I had it hooked up. And yeah, so once the water comes down the reservoir, kind of just goes into the 2 valves, and then yeah, you can use the control unit to set how much you want. So with the control unit, you can say how much water you want every day or every week, and you can set that differently for each valve. And then you can press test amount to see if it's accurate or to what you want. And so you can see it's actually working pretty well, and I was pretty happy with it, but then I noticed there was an issue. What's up, guys? Alright, so I've continued working on this box here. Yeah, it seems to work. This prototype does work. However, I was kind of recycling the water through it over and over and over, testing it out, and I ended up getting some of the dirt into the reservoir, and then I think the dirt has now seized up or been negatively affecting one of the solenoid valves. And so I'm gonna go in there and clean it out, or see if I can. Huh. Well, that's convenient. Looks like you can just replace the solenoid without having to rewire the electronics, separate units. So the electronics are fine, it's just this thing seems to be stopped up or something. If I can just put this new valve in there. Okay. Has been assembled. Now we can test it. Let's give it a shot. All right, guys, moment of truth. So you can see right here, I set it to 120 milliliters and I hit test amount. And so it's working. It's dispensing water and it's not leaking or doing anything weird. But you can see that it is only filling up to 80 milliliters, even though I set 120. That's just because at this point I hadn't tuned the ratio yet of how many seconds to milliliters. That's since been fixed. But yeah, guys, this thing works. It's awesome. I'm really happy with it, and it's made my life a lot easier, for real. I've used this thing for about a month, and yeah, I'll call this a success in my book. All right, guys. So there you have it. I'm actually quite happy with the way this project turned out. I've been actively using this thing for over a month now, and it certainly kept my plants happy and saved me a lot of time, and so that's great. As far as like improvements to make on the next version, if I was gonna upgrade this thing, I would want to make it modular so that I could pair one of the relays and one of the valves together and kind of make that its own thing, so you could kind of add and subtract those based on how many plants you wanted to support. I think that would save a lot of space as well, and you could kind of get the whole thing a lot smaller. Another thing is, I think the reservoir obviously has a lot that could be improved. It should hold more water and it should be easier to fill. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do, but that's kind of the core that I would work on for the next version. Another thing I want to mention, guys, is that I'm going to be open sourcing this project. So if you go to my GitHub, you'll be able to find the source code for the firmware and parts list and maybe a pretty basic guide of how to assemble everything. And yeah, so if you want to take a crack at building this thing yourself, you can do so. But yeah, outside of that, be sure and like and subscribe to the video. It definitely helps the algorithm, helps the channel grow, and then it also helps me feel better as a human being. So, there's that. And then leave a comment if if there's something you think you'd like to see me build next or add to this thing or just anything in general. I'll read it. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thanks for sticking around to the end. And yeah, until next time, peace.